really for the win, even though I'd messed up so bad missing all those fish. I think my decision making and just having my head right and my timing right made up for the execution errors.
Right. Tell us a little bit about this. Tell us about that controversy you were speaking of earlier, my friend.
Oh gosh, yeah. So on day 3, so on day 2 the wind blew like crazy.
Okay.
And so I fished my limit spot all day that day because it was the only place I could get on. And so I didn't go to my big fish spot because it was, it's north facing and the wind was blowing out of the north. And so I just assumed it's a 20-minute ride in calm weather, so it was going to be, a 30, 40-minute ride, and I figured it was going to be muddy and blown out, so I didn't want to waste all that time running down there to just have it be trashed. So I hammered them on my limit spot, and so then on day 3, I started on my limit spot again, and I did really well. I had really good weight. I got my limit, and I culled, so I was up to, 15-plus pounds fairly early in the morning, even though I lost a bunch of fish that day too. I think I lost 4, and they had the GoPros running and everything, so it's all on tape. I'm wanting to get that tape so I can watch it, kind of like football film, and try to figure out what the heck was going wrong there. But anyway, so after I caught my limit and I had pretty good weight, I went to run to my big fish spot. And so I pulled right in. Nobody was there. It was amazing. I was like, oh, my gosh, this is going to be so great. I was there an hour earlier than I went on day 1 because on day 1 when I got there, they bit immediately. So I was like, all right, well, I need to get there earlier because obviously this window is on right there. I don't want to miss it, and maybe it's even better earlier. So I got there earlier, an hour earlier, pulled in, went right to the place where I missed a fish on day 1, flipped into the same grass hole. I mean, I can still picture it in my head, that grass hole. I pitched in there. It sank immediately. I got that thunk, and I slammed him. And it was my biggest fish of the day. It was a 5-pounder, and I hadn't been there 5 minutes. And so I'm like, so I just culled a 1.5-pound fish with a 5-pounder. So I'm like, I'm going crazy. And so I keep flipping away and just grinding in there. And I'd probably been there about an hour, and the leader rolls up. And I didn't know he was the leader, when he came in because I didn't really pay attention. I was just totally focused on my tournament, and me winning, really. And at this point, I knew I had, at least an outside shot. I was actually worried about Brian Schmidt because anytime you're on the Potomac River and that guy's actually got a lead on you, you gotta slam him if you're gonna have a chance. And so this guy comes in, and I've got an old boat. I've got an 06 Triton dual console, so I think he probably just thought I was a weekend angler or a local trail guy, and so I just kind of played it cool, and he started coming in on me. He idled in, and then he got on his trolling motor, and he was coming in, and I just kind of said, like, hey, what's up, man? Like, being friendly. I didn't tell him I was in the tournament, and I was like, how are you doing, man? And he's like, oh, like, my nerves are shot, like, blah, blah, blah. And he told me he had 15 pounds in the boat. And so at that point, I was like, oh, man, well, I might be beating you then. And then he like froze, and he was like, oh, like you're in the Costa? And I was like, yeah, man, I'm smashing them. And so he started coming in, and he's like, well, like I'm the leader, like I don't remember how he worded it, but he was like, can I come in and we can share this or whatever? And I was like, whatever, like if you got to do your thing, but I'm not going anywhere. Like I'm staying right here. And I had my power pole down. I had my trolling motor in the water, so it wasn't a rules violation. I would never protest him or anything, and he really didn't do anything too wrong, but he came really close to me, and so I had my power poles down flipping this grass mat, and it was only 15 yards wide maybe, and he trolled his trolling motor in front of me the direction I was flipping right against the edge of the topped-out hydrilla. And he didn't want to fish the topped-out hydrilla. He basically wanted his boat there, and he was casting into the sparser stuff. And so I didn't even know what to say. I mean, what do you say to that? Like, I didn't even say anything. I just kind of, like, put my hand up, like, oh, my gosh, like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you just trolled through my mat. And so I didn't say anything, and I flipped the stuff close to my boat because he kind of, ruined that stuff a little bit. And I'm flipping, and I kind of finished the little area that I'm at, and I pull my power poles up and reposition the boat basically right next to his boat to protect the topped-out grass that I wanted to fish from him trolling back through it. And so I'm flipping, and he kind of finishes fishing the little part that he kept casting at, like, repetitively, and he starts moving along, and he comes right in front of me again, and so I said something at this point. I'm like, look, man, like I said, you could work in here. I didn't mean you can come on top of my stuff and just, trash it. And he was kind of like, oh, man, like he said something about, you weren't fishing, you were going this way until I told you I had 20 pounds or something. And I'm like, look, man, I didn't come all the way down here because I heard you caught 20 pounds. Like, where do you think I caught the big fish the first day? And and he came right by me, and it was probably a mistake. I probably should have never done it. And I don't have any hard feelings towards him, and I don't think he does to me. But he was so close it only took a half of a flip of my Cinco, and I actually, like, tapped his boat with it. Like you're too close, I can hit you with a Cinco. And he didn't like that. But he kept, so that worked. That got him away. He went pretty far away, about, 100 yards away, and fished down his little milk run deal that he had. And so I was just kind of, it was kind of one of these games where I was trying to get in his head and he was trying to get in my head. And neither one of us really knew who was leading at the time. And so it was kind of a crazy thing to have, we wound up first and second. And it was kind of one of those things where I won the battle, but he won the war because he caught that 20-pound bag on day 2, and that was just too much for me to overtake with all my my execution issues. But I think he was really worried. I think we were both worried about each other. Like, I think he might have thought I might have had him, and I definitely had him in my mind. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm like really so we were fishing so hard. And his co-angler caught a 5-pounder that I saw. And so I kind of was, talking it up with my co-angler loud enough where he could hear me, like, oh, man, like, that's got to hurt, like, just getting in his head kind of thing. And then I missed one a little bit after that. I hooked it, and I was pulling it in, and it was just sturgeon, and it was one of these butterball river fish, they just are built like tanks. And there was a big mix of that down there this week. Some of them were super skinny, and some of them were just, football-shaped, big, fat. And that was one of these. And I saw it flash. The water was clear. I had it coming to the boat, and it just came undone, and I just kind of crumpled. I was like, oh, no. And then about 5 minutes later, I hammered another one, and it was my second biggest fish. I don't know how big it was, something like 3.5 or 4 pounds. And I culled it, and I was wooing and hooting and hollering, and that's like Potomac 101 is. Potomac 101 is when you catch a fish, you don't make a peep. You don't, if you don't need the net, you don't use it. You put it in the boat and you put it in the live well as fast as you can and hope nobody sees you. And but there was only an hour left, and we were the only two there, and we both knew what was there. It was no secret that we were catching giant fish. So when I boated that one, I just let him have it, and I looked at my co-angler and I was like, he might not be winning anymore. And it was a crazy thing. And then we all know how the chip settled. I wound up second, and I'm real proud of it. Yeah. But man, I wanted that win.
Man,
it was that's something. It's one of those things I'm never going to forget that day. Oh my gosh, championship Saturday, FLW Costa Series, and I flopped down the biggest bag of the day, over 18 pounds, and that hot seat was hot.
What a 3 days, man. I mean, what a 3 days. But you still took home a good
crazy.
paycheck.
Still, it's kind of one of those things, can't really believe it. It's like, I don't know if it's sank in yet. I've had some really good finishes and some cool stuff in my fishing career, and I think my fishing career is pretty young. I started out with Virginia Tech. Me and my buddy Scott and my buddy Brett started the Virginia Tech fishing team there back in '07, and those two actually won that national championship, and I wasn't the one that actually fished that. So, but we get the team recognition. So I've always, people always ask me about that, and it wasn't me, but it was our team, and we used that to our advantage, and I used that as a springboard into the fishing industry and tournament fishing, and then I started my guide service, and I won a FLW college fishing event back in like 2009, and I haven't won anything since then. I fish a couple of team trails, and I fish with Steve Camp and Priority, and I fish with English Choice on their team trail, and they pull anywhere from 120 boats all the way up to some of them pull 220 boats. So when you get that many boats, it's so hard to win. And so when I was on stage and I told them, I'm like, I feel like it's not my time to win because I just keep having all these things go wrong, and you always hear people that do win say, it was my time. It was my time to win, and so I was just worried all 3 days, all these execution errors. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just want it to be my time to win, and it wound up being not my time, but man, was it cool.
Well, man, we definitely appreciate the feedback and look at the tournament. Tell the guys out there some of the baits that you use for the week, the 3 days.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no problem. So in practice, I actually threw a chatterbait a lot because you can cover good water, you can fish it faster.
Right.
And one of the keys was actually that I didn't really mention earlier was finding grass that didn't have that snot grass or slime or what, I don't even know what to call it, that black stuff. And when you could find that and you could fish it cleanly, then it was just a matter of finding the fish in there. So chatterbait worked pretty well. Tournament day, I had a ton of rods out on the deck, tournament day, and it was just kind of day one. I only wound up using 4 rods. So the next day I put them all in the box, and I only had those out. And so I started my day out with a chatterbait, just slow rolling it through the grass, popping it free, and every once in a while, one would choke it down, and you'd slam them, and pray to God they came into the boat. And as the water receded, I would switch to that Zoom speed worm, and I think it was a watermelon red one. I'm pretty sure I could have used any color. It was just kind of a confidence thing. And I had it on a 3/16 ounce weight, 5/0 superline hook, and 16-pound gamma, and that was also thrown on a JB Custom Rod Snake, 7 foot. And then once the water dropped out and it was low and there was barely any movement, and when that happens, that grass clumps up a lot thicker, I would switch to a flipping presentation, and I was flipping a Senko on a 5/0 extra wide gap hook with a 1/8 ounce pegged, and it was on just about the same setup, but I actually used the JB Custom Rod Sword on that. It's a little bit stiffer. It's got a fast tip, and it really drives the hook home good. And that was those 3 baits right there. I could have done it. And one thing in the back of my mind that I keep wondering is basically what I did is after I kept losing fish, that's when I would switch to that speed worm. And I keep wondering to myself, man, if I had just thrown that speed worm the whole time, I wonder if they would have bit that, because with that extra wide gap hook, when you pin them, they usually don't come undone, even if they do get in the grass. So that's one thing that it might haunt me, not haunt me, just I don't know. I'll never know. And